Welcome to the very first episode of My Normal. My Normal is a podcast created by myself, Aiden King, and I'm hoping to have a lot of really great conversations with people that I consider to be the building blocks of creative industries. We're going to talk heavily about the journeys and the sacrifices within the products that they are putting out there to the public for you to enjoy. And yeah, it's been really exciting putting together this podcast. It's been a long time coming for me, and I'm really excited about the potential of where it can go. But most importantly, I hope you just enjoy these chats as much as I do. Today's episode is with a brilliant lady named Paige. Paige was my instructor in a mental health first aid course I completed just recently. This course was funded through Support Act and Crew Care. Support Act and Crew Care are a really important backbone to creative industries such as the arts and touring and music sector within Australia and beyond, actually. These guys are providing counselling, mental health services for like-minded people who, when you pick up the phone and give Support Act a call, you can expect someone to pick up who can relate or understand the complexities involved in touring or being an artist and things along those lines. This is episode number 1. Please bear with me as I work out how to do this for the very first time. Please like and subscribe. Share this with your friends, family, and anyone who you think might be interested in having listened to these conversations. I hope you enjoy. Thanks again. Alrighty, Paige, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank
Very well.
you.
Where are you today? You're at home, I imagine?
I am at home today. Yes, I am at home today. It's a little bit windy, but it's a pretty good winter's day overall.
You're on the Sunshine Coast, from what I remember. Gold Coast.
Pretty much.
I will admit,
same.
I thought that was the same thing. The weather's been better than Melbourne.
Yeah, it's been pretty good winter at the moment, so we've been very lucky.
Very good. Can you tell the listeners what it is that you do?
All right, a little bit
how many
about
hats do you wear?
me. So, how many hats? A few hats, actually. Mm-hmm. So, I guess in terms of a workspace, I work in mental health on the Gold Coast and have done within the sector for about 14 years or so. In numerous different organisations and businesses, depending on kind of where I've been at that point in time. I've also provide mental health first aid training, which has been really awesome. I've been doing that for about 5 years now. And that's been both community services and corporate organisations and companies, depending on, I guess, the need at the time, what we've really noticed. I'm a mum, which is probably the funnest job I've had.
Yeah.
Of a 7-month-old little girl. She's pretty cool. Her name's Piper. And then I do a couple of other little things. I'm a reserve lieutenant in the Signals Corps for the Australian Defence Force, and I also volunteer for the Gold Coast Community Fund as a submissions officer, where we provide financial support for people in need on the Gold Coast. So that's kind of a little bit about me and the things that I do at the moment.
Very good. Sounds like you're born to assist.
Yeah, maybe.
Very good. So we've crossed paths. You were my instructor on the mental first aid course I completed just last week.
Yes.
Firstly, for the listeners, it's a course that really gives you the basics, and also just sort of helps you to I guess push down those walls around mental health and how you can identify mental health within your industry or even within your personal life. Is there anything I'm sort of missing as I guess the tagline for these courses?
Yeah, well, for mental health first aid, I mean, it is just that. It is about the first aid. So it's not to teach you, how to diagnose or anything for someone. It is more to support people to feel educated and prepared so that when they do identify that someone is going through a tough time, struggling, whatever it is, potentially becoming unwell, that they have some education and tools that they can support that person to connect to long-term support to treatment, depending what that is. And it's about the awareness. It's also about learning about language and, the appropriate language to use when talking about someone experiencing mental illness. And then overall, just to help reduce that stigma as well around when we look at mental illness and what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally found it like extremely valuable, as you probably mentioned from the email I sent you post our session.
Yeah.
But especially, I mean, with my area working in the music industry, both domestic and internationally, I'm 30. I consider myself still quite a young gun in the game. I've been doing it for sort of 10 to 15 years. And it really is an industry that you kind of find your own feet. And with that sort of territory, you are sort of essentially your own HR department on how you can deal with that. Anything from crippling anxieties to am I doing my job right? To how to get the job, and then even when you get the job, when you're doing the job, there's that anxieties that still exist. I refer to my psychologist refers to my job as a high adrenaline workplace, which really made it quite made it make sense to me. And I guess that's sort of a lot of challenges within our industry is when people go out and work, in these high adrenaline places, coming home and returning back to earth or their home is generally quite a challenging task that the average person might not be able to necessarily consultate with. That's not the word. Consultate with their partners and that sort of stuff, because we essentially do exist off on our own journey and that sort of stuff, which I guess people try to make sense of. What's your first memory of mental health?
I think for me in particular, I guess how I became kind of passionate about mental health and then kind of which led into training and upskilling mental health was when I first started uni. I actually was looking at human services rather than psych, and I ended up transferring through to a Bachelor of Psych instead. But I actually had a really good relationship with a gentleman who was within the homeless community within Brisbane City, who I met and formed quite a interesting, unique relationship with. He was, I'm going to say in his 50s or 60s, an older gentleman. He most definitely, you could tell he'd had quite a tough life. And I guess as I built that connection with him throughout, I guess, 2 or 3 years of heading up to Brisbane. At the time, I was quite into theatre and acting, and I was actually participating in a school up there at the time. So I was up in rehearsals in Brisbane for, 4 or 5 nights a week. And as I formed a bit of a relationship connection with him and found out a little bit about his story, I realised that, there would be so many more people that were actually going to be probably within the homeless community that did struggle with mental illness, yet maybe wasn't identified because some of the other things that they experienced, like drug and alcohol use, kind of, I guess, took a forefront in terms of that being, the reason why they are where they are. Actually, the trauma or things that they experienced as they grew up. So yeah, that's probably where, I came a bit passionate. And plus, my dad used to like inviting random different people to Christmases and lunches and big events that were struggling, and he felt, needed that kind of connection and support. So we got used to having, different people in our household who we took under our wing. So yeah.
Great. That sounds fantastic. So would you refer to either maybe in that story your father or even the homeless man as sort of one of your first inspirations to go down this field?
Yeah, my dad always taught me that there was always capacity to give back and always capacity to help people or guide people or support people. So whether that was, providing job opportunities or a roof over their head from my dad's perspective, And then for me, it was more the untold story for the gentleman that I met in Brisbane City on the streets of Edward Street.
Right. What would have you done if it wasn't mental health?
Oh, to be honest, I don't really know. When I was at school, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. Actually, I was really big into drama and theatre. So I did do that for a long time, and I was kind of within that field and did a bit of theatre and acting and film. It was probably just up until my dad passed, and kind of, spent time supporting him and the family for a period of time. And then once he passed, I kind of just didn't get back into that and just focused on the field of mental health. But I kind of has always done it the whole time.
Right. Was your dad a creative person?
Oh, passionate? I don't know about creative. I mean, he probably was in his own way. He was a very, very smart, intelligent, hardworking person. Whether he was creative, I don't know. Creative in his own way, maybe. Definitely not arty or a great singer or could play an instrument. Not so much.
Right. What's something that you wish you knew when you first dove into this industry?
I think when you first are learning about mental health, there is that, even if you think to yourself that you're a non-judgmental person and, you don't let stigma kind of take that forefront in terms of creating those assumptions and those ideas and thoughts and feelings about the subject, I think naturally as human beings we do. And I think as I was getting into the field, I realized how much I didn't know, even after going to uni, where I wasn't going to learn that until I was in the field, talking, working with people and actually learning their story. And what you realize is that every single person's story is different. And that's something that you just kind of adapt to wherever possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such a diverse thing, and I imagine it's one of those ones where when you're studying in the textbooks and that sort of thing, versus even studying case studies to actually going and dealing face to face with these patients. Is patients the right
we
term?
just say people.
People?
Yeah,
perfect.
so I try not to say client participants or anything like that. We just say people.
Yeah, perfect. Great. So I'm just going to try and sort of stay, I guess, more or less around youth to start with, and then we'll get into sort of the statistics and sort of where we want to, anything you want to address there. But what would you say would be the first transformation in your life?
In regards to learning about mental health, or?
Well, I guess in general, something that sort of, I guess, kicked your life into gear, whether that be, deciding that you're going to dive heavily into mental health, or
Probably the understanding and the realization that things don't come easy. And I'm not saying that it come easy to everyone or in every circumstances, but that things generally don't come easy. So it's about the passion, the focus and the drive to want to do something, want to learn something, want to be something or someone, and that's what gets you to where you want to be. And sometimes I think, probably where I thought I was going to be 10 years ago is a completely different spot to where I am now, but that's just all a part of the journey and rolling with the punches as they come.
Yeah. Is it to get into your field? Is it more of an academic sort of adventure, or is it sending out a lot of CVs and trying to get in, or is it a lot of volunteering? How do you start up?
Honestly, when you're talking about mental health, the biggest thing is about that experience. So a lot of friends of mine who I did uni with took quite some time to get into the field because, yes, they had their degree, but what we say is they're still quite green. So in terms of their experience and ability to work with people was different. So I think what supported me to get into the field, which I actually obtained employment my second year of uni, which I was very lucky for, but I volunteered for over a year with that organisation to gain experience, I guess, build a profile, and for me to feel confident in what I do. And again, working with people who are experiencing that is very different from, going through, your reading material and doing assessments and exams. It helps and supports you. But the real experience of that face-to-face is what supports you to, be the best that you can to support someone and guide them to what they're going through. Most people within the field do have some level of education or university degree, whether it's human services, social work, psychological science, psychology. There's also a lot of people that work in the field that have a Cert 4 or a diploma in mental health, drug and alcohol counselling, disability. So it really depends on the path that people want to go to, depending on what they need.
Can someone exist on a professional level without qualifications?
Yes, they can.
Like, can someone sort of start up their own practice or that sort of youth services or that sort of thing? Or
probably, I mean, you can, but it might be that there's certain things in terms of your insurance and that you would have to have in education or learning around ensuring that you were covered and providing what you say as the best possible support. I think any education is really, really important for people to actually know, what it is that they need to know to support whoever it is, whether it's youth or whether it's adults, whether it's, people experiencing drug and alcohol issues, or whether it's, mental health as a whole. I think if someone's really passionate about it, they want to learn and they want to educate themselves in some capacity. I mean, if you want to open your own practice as a social worker, you're going to have, your bachelor of social work or your master's in social work, and then actually go through the steps to be someone that can, claim for Medicare and have their own practice. Same as a psychologist, you have to actually go through those next steps, develop your thesis, go through those 2 years, and then I guess get approved to actually get a practice as a psychologist. So people can provide coaching and counselling, but again, you want to educate yourself in a space that that you're doing the right thing for people.
Yep. You consider yourself it's obviously quite a rewarding job. Is there many rewards that you've sort of not expected from your time in the work?
I love my job, even after, I guess, all of the things that I do outside of mental health. Because I don't know if I mentioned as well, I run a couple of gyms as well, and mental health has a big part in your physical health as well as your mental health. But I can't seem to leave mental health, and I don't think I ever will, because the ability to provide some level of support or guidance isn't even the feeling that you get within yourself, but I guess the steps or the journey that you see someone else going through and realize that, because you were able to provide some level of support or assistance, and then realize that that person got there because of the work that they did, not actually because of what you did. You just maybe supported them or provided an opportunity maybe that they didn't see. But generally, anytime someone's going through their recovery journey, it's a work that they've had to put in to get to where they are, not because anyone did anything for them.
Is there, in your opinion, is there enough support out there for the amount of, I guess, sort of inquiries coming through?
This is a hard one. There is a lot of support out there, but there's always a need. I mean, in any program or service we've provided, we've always had wait lists and difficulties being able to provide the support that people need. There's always gaps, 100%. There's probably a lot more out there than people realize if they don't work in the mental health sector. Probably don't realize what supports is out there, but there's huge gaps still in terms of funding, programs, supports, and even gaps just within everyone's different again. So there's some supports that aren't able to meet the needs of people that they have. Obviously, they've tried to address that with NDIS, so the National Disability Insurance Scheme, but there's still gaps. There's still funding issues. So it is what it is, and we are definitely in a better space than we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but we've still got a long way to go.
Yep. So I read sorry, I wrote down a thing that was quite relevant to that. I'll come back to it. So you're working for Mental Health First Aid Australia?
So I am a qualified facilitator for Mental Health First Aid Australia. So the organisation that I used to previously work for actually sent me away to Sydney to be trained up for that, and I provided it internally within the organisation. But there's a lot of facilitators that Mental Health First Aid have trained around Australia who provide that training that's, I guess, supported and directed by Mental Health First Aid Australia. But we're kind of like contracted to provide it, if that makes sense.
Yep. So if you were to go out on your own, what foundation or what sort of organisation would it be that you would see as quite valuable in terms of mental health?
So mine probably would have an aspect of accommodation. If I ever actually developed my own support service, it would be around short-term support, and that would have a component of accommodation. Accommodation is probably, one of our biggest barriers here on the Gold Coast. And when people are experiencing mental health concerns and become unwell, they're unable to maintain rent or tenancies as a whole. That's a huge gap that I always see as needing more and more. And, the accommodation needs to come with a level of support. We have supported accommodation services out there. Some are great, some of them are not so great. But yeah, that would probably be something that I would love to be able to offer at some point. But yeah, it's a big job.
Yeah, I always, whenever I would have the idea of running away from home at a very young age, I always thought I just wish I could run up to Queensland and live on the beach.
That would be nice.
Is there?
People have done that. They live there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very expensive real estate. Is there quite a large homeless population in the Gold Coast?
There is, and people probably don't realise. There's different statistics as well of people that are living in their cars or on the streets. But there's a big chunk of people who are couch surfing as well. So really do come under the statistics of people that are homeless. Again, sometimes people don't realize actually how many people, don't have a place to live on the Gold Coast. Also because obviously Gold Coast City Council, try to, support people to keep moving and, not to be staying in one position. So, they're very, transient. So it's not necessarily going to see them in the same place all the time. But we do have a big homeless community. And if you're, working in the mental health sector, which I do, we're constantly trying to work with the homelessness supports and accommodations to try and get people in. And, it's waitlist after waitlist sometimes. So, sometimes we're looking at getting, small grants for short-term accommodation options and things like that. But yeah, there's definitely a limit on the availabilities for housing for people, particularly on a low income.
Right. Is there a lot of regulations and sort of hurdles that you have to jump over that might be frustrating in terms of someone's recovery?
Look, there is a lot of things that are in place, though, are to support that person in the best way possible in terms of your processes, policies and boundaries and working alongside people. It's actually also to support the people working within the field to have the boundaries so that, it can be a lot in a day that you take on and are working through to support someone. So, having those processes and boundaries and important for people to also reduce burnout within the field as well.
Yep. Support seeking appears to be growing at a rapid rate around Australia. What do you sort of attribute to that?
To be honest, there's so many factors. I'd love to say this is exactly, the reason. At the moment in particular, people have reduced access to family support, natural supports maybe that they're getting. So they are having to kind of lean on some of those professional supports that maybe that they wouldn't have before. We still do see quite a limit in people accessing support. So, for every 3 people that have an experience of a mental illness, only one of those people are generally accessing support. So there's still a big chunk of people who aren't actually accessing, when they need, which can be, again, for various reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could also sort of muddy the water of statistics too.
What's that for? Sorry.
Just in terms of the getting the accurate numbers on these statistics on people actually not seeking that support.
Yeah, it's definitely hard because it also is about, you know, whether people identify or have insight to what they're experiencing as well. And, you know, I can imagine a big chunk of the homeless community that we see and support that potentially may have not been picked up, that they do experience, you know, other things like a mental illness and, you know, kind of fall in between those gaps.
Yep. There was a lot of statistics that were thrown at me throughout the course. One of the big ones that really stood out for me, that females were more likely than males to experience depression. And however, suicide exists quite prominently within men. Is there sort of, I guess, any deterring factors in that you can break down that for me?
There's also statistics that show that, you know, again, for various reasons, that women seem to seek help more than men sometimes. And, you know, at this point where he's talking about men and women, obviously there's people that identify, you know, differently as well. But just in regards to, I guess, some of those statistics that look at both men and women, yeah, most definitely the men can be higher in, you know, the attempts to end their own life, and but women do have a higher rate of, you know, seeking support. So that can be a contributing factor as a part of that. Yep. But there's so many other things as well. We have stigma, we have culture, we have religious beliefs. So yeah, there's so many different things that can affect that data, which is really difficult to identify. But
yeah. Another massive number that I didn't anticipate was the 3,000 people a year. Typically, the number of 3,000 people dying by suicide just in Australia alone. That's such a massive number. I mean, even comparing it to something like a COVID that, you know, has stopped the world at the moment. But, you know, these numbers have existed for a long time and will continue to exist. Is it sort of frustrating that these statistics and numbers aren't really at the forefront of I guess just public health rather than just sort of being put into a mental health category?
Look, the statistics are out there. You know, again, it's like anything. You know, it depends if people actually, I guess, take that, next step to learning more about it. You know, it's about how much people talk about it and I guess go over it as well. Like, I know there's been plenty of times on the news where they've talked about the statistics of suicide. You know, what we generally say is no matter what the statistics are, one's too many, you know. Yeah. At the moment, I think it's approximately between 8 or 9 people a day. And when you look at that, it's not only have we lost, you know, those 8 or 9 people that day, it's the impact that also has on their family, their friends, their neighborhood, their school, their workplace is huge. So, you know, we generally say, you know, obviously one's too many. So it's about identifying and providing opportunities for people to feel as though that they can talk about what it is that they're going through and how we can do whatever we can to support them to maintain hope.
Yep.
They're going through that, you know, that there is hope at the other end.
Right. I've had a lot of sort of headlines, I guess, pop across my social media and that sort of stuff that suicide rates during COVID are at an all-time high, but I haven't been able to find any numbers or I guess any references as to that. And not to say that I don't believe it, but is there there obviously is a rise of concern for mental health during COVID. Can you shed any light on that for me?
Yeah, I mean, I can't confirm or deny that there's been an increase necessarily in suicide based on, you know, we're still going through it at the moment. So it'll be one of those things I imagine that we reflect on to kind of, you know, what that looked like. However, we do know that in terms of people's overall mental health, there's been a huge impact. You know, even little things where people, you know, may have had certain distractions or things happening within their lives that, you know, they weren't really maybe putting themselves first. And in times like something like COVID, they've had more time to think and process, where maybe at that point they've identified, wow, there's actually a lot within my life that I want to change or I'm not happy with. And then, kind of moving through the motions from then, potentially becoming unwell. But, people have, got financial stress. They've got, concerns within relationships and families, people spending so much more time together than what they may be used to. So all of those factors definitely have an impact on, I guess, the rates of people becoming unwell at the moment. And from what we can see from a service perspective, it is definitely high.
Yeah. So would you think that it's a good or a bad thing that sort of, I guess it's being highly publicized, that sort of suicide is at an all-time high. However, there aren't the statistics or the numbers to sort of back that statement up?
I'm going to say because we're still in that space, they haven't necessarily done, surveys and things like that where they identify what those statistics are. Potentially there are reports coming from the departments of health where they've identified that there has been a higher rate of suicides than maybe before. Again, I don't have those specific statistics, but I can only within the mental health sector, and people are seeking upskilling, training, advice, connecting with, professional services, whether it be a counsellor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, more at the moment, which, could lead to that. Obviously, more and more people are becoming unwell based on what it is that they're experiencing. And as a part of that, yes, there could be an increase in suicides.
Yeah. I've through my journey through COVID, I definitely, like anyone in the music industry, we've essentially been reduced to nothing. I very early on, I took it upon myself to sort of upskill on like a lot of technical stuff that I've always wanted to do and like learn some programs and all that sort of thing. I definitely found myself burning out and sort of with that constant and that still thing going of the fact that we actually don't know when we're coming back, let alone being able to go visit a friend, let alone being able to cram thousands of people inside a hot, sweaty sauna and play loud music. I've from what my initial sort of consultations with people that I assumed would have been struggling through COVID, actually had some good news from a lot of those people that I sort of checked in on it, and people sort of appreciated that the world had sort of slowed down to a pace they were comfortable at running at. So I guess it is the testament to what you were saying earlier, that it does affect everyone completely differently. And there are different solutions for everyone. And yeah, I guess to just run your own race, especially this time, like there's going to be those barriers such as financial and employment, all that sort of stuff that exists. But this is really reduced. COVID does not discriminate. It has reduced everyone to the same playing field. Essentially, it's judging people on the security they've managed to put themselves pre-COVID as to how well they're dealing with it. How are you dealing with it yourself through COVID?
Oh, look, we've had good days and bad days. I think when COVID hit, I had a 6-week-old bubba. So to be honest, I was probably in an okay position in the sense that I was going to be on maternity leave anyway. So for me, that wasn't too bad. For my husband, he was on paternity leave, and in which we had both of our gyms shut down for 2.5 months. So he had to actually go back and outsource work, which he ended up having to go to New South Wales for. So he spent a lot of time away from home, and our little one, which was, a bit tough at the time, but you got to pay your mortgage and do all those things that you have to do. But, I started working a lot more in providing, I picked up starting to work into training within mental health first aid earlier than what I was going to come back as. So, I was fortunate enough that was something I could still maintain and support with, I guess, during COVID. I had to adapt online from face to face for what I'm used to, but, that was okay. I've been able to connect with a whole lot more people than I thought I would based on that. So we've had ups and downs. I think, from what we see within people that we've been supporting, that have been, you've got some people that are in the same position financially, Yes, they haven't maybe been able to spend as much time with friends and family, but they've enjoyed the slow pace working from home and just kind of, getting the opportunity to breathe. Then you've got some people who have had, lost their businesses or companies based on not being able to maintain during, some level of lockdown. You've got some people that have been able to just put everything in hibernation and just have that break. And then as soon as, things pick back up, depending on what state you're in, they've kind of been able to go back to normal. Everyone's positions are so differently, and not everyone meets the guidelines of all the financial support from the government as well. So, I mean, overall for us, we're all healthy and we've still got a roof over our head currently. So, we're okay, but, everyone's, definitely in a different spot.
Yep. Doing and working within the fields that you do you get a lot of time for yourself? Do you get your weekends? I mean, obviously you're enjoying your maternity leave at the moment, enjoying all that time with your daughter and your husband that probably haven't had the opportunity to do in such detail. But I mean, even during COVID, like, are you getting to do your own thing?
Look, I really value self-care, and self-care for anyone, again, looks different. My favourite saying, looks different for everyone. But self-care is really important. Mine is training and exercising. Although it might hurt at the time that I'm doing it, the benefit I get for the rest of my day in terms of my mindset is something that I value a lot. Spending time with, my family is really important to me, but don't get me wrong, I actually really get a lot out of working as well. So it's been hard to slow down, but, I've been able to find as much of a balance as I can. But, yeah, it's actually just taking that time when you can. And sometimes you have to book it in, for your self-care, or going, I need to do something for me and I want to spend time with the family, or I need to be able to, go to the gym or do my walks or whatever it is for that person. And sometimes, you have to roster it in because life's busy, but it's still really important.
Yeah. Do you find that work can take away from your relationships or anything like that, or vice versa? Can it gain, advantages to your relationships?
Yeah.
Both with your husband and your family or your friends, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you spoke to my friends and family, they're probably over me asking about how they feel, and let's talk about our feelings and emotions, because I like to talk about those things. But, it has its pros and its cons. If you work a lot, it takes time away from the family. And sometimes, you're disconnecting, or if you're working late and you're always on your phone or your computer because you're working, it takes away from that, that connection. But at the same time provides opportunities as well, where, you can work maybe a little bit from home, or you do have the flexibility within certain jobs where you do get different chunks of time off if you're not working a Monday to a Friday job, 9 to 5. It's just trying to find that balance. But don't get me wrong, again, I balance it well some days and balance it not so well other days.
Do you find yourself when you're at, say, like a friend's birthday party or even like a family event, that you're constantly talking about, your work and like your passion through mental health and that sort of stuff?
I actually try not to, and not only because not everyone necessarily wants to talk about it, but because as a part of who I am, I really like to ensure that I'm making time for people to talk about their lives and themselves. So I actually try to not talk about too much about myself or my work, because once I get going, I just won't stop. But two, so that, they might not have had opportunities in their day or their week where they've got to talk about them and what they're going through or what's working or not working for them. So I try to do my best to provide that opportunity for them in case they didn't get it anywhere else.
Yep. I've got a friend who's like an air traffic controller. Then I've got another friend who's like a cop, and I find myself every time we catch up or we're sitting around a table, I'm just sitting there, just essentially like picking their brain for all their case studies.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, like the case studies throughout the mental health course that we completed, both of it's in the textbooks, and then also studies or cases that came across your path. I found so extremely fascinating, the ones that particularly, the thing that I didn't really have any knowledge on was psychosis and that sort of stuff. And even reading it and finding this, it's a point, is it 4% of the population will experience some sort of psychosis? Is that correct?
0.5%.
0.5. Reading that in the first sort of, first couple of sentences, you assume that it's probably not going to come across your desk. But then the case studies that you're involved with, I mean, psychosis can be such a crippling, condition. But yeah, it's just fascinating to me what the brain is capable of doing.
And because psychosis is something that really detaches you from reality, it has a huge impact on a person's life to communicate, have conversations, build relationships, be able to identify day-to-day tasks. When we're talking about people in active psychosis, really tough for people, most definitely.
Yeah. There was the one particular story that you mentioned when you were driving on the highway and you saw someone talking to themselves, wave their arms around it, and you identified them to be, I guess, unsafe. So you pulled over, and I don't know if you want to go into that story or not, but hearing that story made my heart just race. I mean, mainly because I hadn't had any experience with psychosis myself, but also to just yourself being a woman pulling your car over on a highway to approach this person to help. That one had my heart racing.
Yeah, I think I definitely don't want to encourage anyone listening to be pulling over the highway, picking up strange men. But look, from what I could see and identify, that if someone was walking along the highway, waving their arms, didn't necessarily come across as though, his self-care was a priority for him. I could quite quickly identify there was probably more going on than, him just going for a bit of a stroll. So I felt confident that, in my skill base and for me to identify risks, that was okay. I identified a space that I could pull over on the highway, that although it probably wasn't the safest of the safest, at that point in time, I kind of, I guess, weighed up those risks that, potentially supporting this person was going to outweigh that. For his circumstances in particular, he was a lovely, lovely man who got very lost on the motorway and was trying to get to Centrelink and Palmy on the Gold Coast. And, as a part of that is, I asked all the questions I need to try and identify, whether it was going to be safe to have him in the car and whether I felt comfortable to do so. And obviously, asked permission to, let people know that I was picking up someone, close family members and friends didn't think it was the best idea at the time, but the overall is that I was able to support him to get off, a dangerous motorway, that he was at risk, get him to where he needed to be, and ensure, I guess, overall his safety. Didn't necessarily, save his, solve his life problems or anything like that, but something that I could do to kind of, I guess, support him at that point in time. But it was quite clear that as I started that conversation with the window closed, before I determined it was safe to either get out the car or let him in the car, that, he was experiencing, psychosis when, certain things that he was talking about around, floating and little mermaids and things like that he was visually seeing. So I could quite easily and quickly identify that he was experiencing, some level of psychosis at that point.
I feel like they're my insecurities around psychosis as to what made my heart beat when hearing that story.
Yeah. And it is, I remember when I was 19, I had my first shift as a volunteer working in our supported accommodation here on the Gold Coast, north within the Southport region. And the first person I come across who experienced active levels of psychosis at different periods of time, started talking to me about seeing the devil in my eyes and was I a bad person. And I was 19 and looking at a 6'3" older gentleman, in his late 40s. And, to be honest, was fearful because I didn't know. But I ended up, working alongside that gentleman for, I don't know, almost 10 years. And most definitely was never fearful. But because it was the unknown, you sit in that space of angst and, not sure what to do. But once you start to feel confident in your own ability skills, but also just understand that it is just a person, it's just that they're going through a tough time, that, you realize there's there's not as much to be afraid of as what you might have originally thought.
Yeah, I imagine it's quite a challenging, I guess, sort of like the typical workplace, that sort of thing. There's a goal or there's a target, and you do the things necessary to complete those things, and then you finish that task. Whereas mental health, I mean, am I right in saying that no one really considers themselves cured? You are just on your path to a I guess a better state. So, is it was it sort of hard to sort of get into that sort of rhythm of not trying to sort of like help to get that cure immediately and sort of slow down and work to the person's pace? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what you learn too is like, it's journey. So, if someone becomes unwell, whether it's, experiencing psychosis or anxiety, depression, or something like that, everyone's journey is going to look different. And we generally don't, talk about, once they're recovered and then, they move on and, it's like it's never happened kind of thing. That, like anything that you experience in life, it changes who you are, how you respond. You think of the world differently. And, we always try to say, when someone does become unwell, try not to focus on, I want to be that person who I was, but, focus on who I want to be, because you are going to be different. No doubt, when that happens, when you become a parent, or if you become, you get a new job, or you graduate from a new degree and you go into a different field, you're constantly changing as a person. So when someone becomes unwell and experiences maybe a diagnosis or a mental illness, it changes you as a person. So it's something that, people, can potentially be aware of as they move forward. Now, we all know that, or not necessarily we all know, but we know that, if you're experiencing an episode of depression or psychosis, or, potentially have a panic attack, it puts you at risk to having more panic attacks or potentially going through those episodes of depression or psychosis, more than maybe what it would have been before you had that first episode. So, it is something that people need to be mindful of, of their overall mental health, how they're traveling, the things that they're doing in their life to support their overall wellness. So, yeah, we generally look at it as a bit of a journey of something that people need to consider. So, although someone might have experienced, quite traumatic panic attacks as they're growing up, they might not experience that, but they're mindful that, depending on things that happen to their life, that they could, fall back into that space where they need to, be more considerate of their own mental health.
Yeah, it really shines a light on really valuing the person, like your friendships and your personalities within your friendships that can really help you. When the times are tougher than others. I know for me in my own journey, there was one of my best mates. He was the first one to sort of identify that he had his struggles, and that sort of encouraged me to sort of analyze, the struggles within myself. And it's a beautiful thing to have that support group around you that can then they could push you to to go and see your GP and that sort of thing. For the listeners, what can you sort of identify as the first steps into I guess assessing your own mental health, and what your first step should be in seeking a better outcome for yourself?
So I guess in terms of, identifying whether you're traveling well or not, it is different for everyone, but you think about the impacts that it's having on your life. So, if you're finding it difficult to connect with people, if you're finding that you're from loved ones, friends, if you're finding it difficult to focus, think logically, whatever it is, that might be little signs that you're feeling unwell or traveling unwell. And at that point, looking at what steps it is that you need to take in order to, get some support. Now, people that have felt unwell previously in their life, and it's something that they do have, moments, or depending on the situation where they have become unwell, start to identify those things sometimes a little bit earlier than maybe what they did at the beginning, because they start to learn about themselves, their feelings, their thoughts, how they respond to So, it depends on each person, but you can generally start to, I guess, think about the impact of your thoughts and your feelings and what's happening within your life and what is having an impact, and then identify maybe that, needing to talk to someone, could potentially be beneficial. We try to say that your natural, networks are going to be your most beneficial and helpful in your overall recovery. And that's your friends, your family, your work colleagues, whoever it is. Because they're people that you're always going to have around you. Sometimes clinical services are open from 8 till 4, Monday to Friday. Obviously, you've got after-hours services and things like that, but those natural networks and connections are super important, to be open and lean on when you need.
Yep. Do you, I mean, obviously in your training and your education into doing, do you spend a lot of time worrying about the people you're working with? Or both working with as, people that are coming to you, and then also people that you are, working alongside in the industry?
We do. I'm definitely a lot better at managing it now than what I was 14 years ago. I'd say as soon as I went home, I was thinking about, whether that person was going to be okay. I can't believe that's what they're going through. Why are people living like this? How is this okay? It's not okay. That was really tough, I think, when I first got into the field. I definitely manage it a lot better now because I know I'm passionate about it. I know that I love it, and I never want to get to a point where I burn out and can't do it, because that means then I'm unable to provide that support or opportunities for people to get well or to get the support that they need. But it's a tough one, I'll be honest, and some of my colleagues, we'll be texting or calling each other, well after hours, because we'll be, trying to rack our brains with something or strategies, or tomorrow, let's do this and this, we'll get these people involved. How do we connect them with this? Or I haven't been able to find that person for 3 days. Okay, what we'll do is we'll get 2 staff members to drive around Surfers Paradise to see if we can find him. We know the areas that he normally goes to, because we know that he's traveling really unwell at the moment, and we do need to get him some support. So to be honest, I try to say after a certain time I stop work, but because, we want the best for people, sometimes that we find, we're going a little bit, above and beyond what maybe our work role looks like. But it's because that's what we want to do. It's never expected in our field. And always, our regional managers or, even the CEO of the companies never expect people to do that. But naturally, you see that happen within the mental health sector because people want to do everything they can for the people that they're supporting.
Yep. I guess this next one's probably a bit more for myself. After completing the mental health first aid certificates, what are some of the next steps I can take into upskilling within mental health?
So there'll be a lot of other little short courses and things that you can do. But in terms of, mental health first aid covers, I guess, the overall basis of, being able to identify signs and symptoms of different mental health diagnoses, some of the strategies that you can do to provide support. If you're kind of getting into that point of, wanting to upskill and, learn that little bit more, I'd definitely be looking at some level of a certificate or diploma within mental health, drug and alcohol, community services, counselling, disability, depending on the exact space you're wanting to do, because that's going to give you that next step up of information and education around mental health specifically. Now, if you're looking at, you can do, little short courses or, e-learning stuff online around mental health and identifying some of those things, but the majority of stuff is probably covered in mental health first aid. So those kind of, next steps are probably looking at those certificates or diplomas and then university degrees kind of from there. But there's loads out there of little short courses that people can do.
Yep, great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving further into it. I mean, mostly, for just my own personal development. I obviously approached this course looking to sort of add to the music industry and that sort of stuff. But I mean, even just like when I posted the badge on my Facebook and quite a big spiel on how proud I am to have contained or to got the mental health badge. And I just even found on a personal level, just talking with friends, just my way of listening has like completely adapted for the better way, having completed this course. And also just even conversations with people over the weekend, and I really couldn't have a better word to say about the course and what it was done, but also to just the delivery of the course. I mean, yourself is an extremely good, I guess you say, lecturer or deliverer, but even just like the
facilitator, maybe.
Banger. Perfect. But even just like the modules and all that sort of thing, I'm actually studying a TAE, which is a learning course at the moment. And it's to enable me to get into lecturing and all that sort of stuff within the university that I'm working for. And I have to say that the learning delivery of this course versus a learning course of me teaching how to learn, I was very impressed. And I actually did an assessment this week and used a lot of things that I learned throughout this course on how to deliver information. So anyone who's wanting to potentially look into this course, but is sort of, I guess, fearful of the workload, it is delivered in a way that you can go at your own pace, and it's all really, really captivating content. So it's whoever was involved in that and putting that course structure together has done an incredible job.
That's Mental Health First Aid Australia. They did very, very well and did a lot of work to adapt it to be online in such a quick turnaround.
Yep. I guess another thing I'll add too, that the importance of support act and crew care within our industry are a big support. I haven't had to pull on them myself, but hearing other students within our course on how they've been assisted by these courses, I guess they have assisted me in funding my my course through Mental Health First Aid Australia. So yeah, it's there's an incredible support network out there for people like myself who consider that I don't really live on the spectrum of the workplace like everyone else. It's really great that we live in a place where these boundaries can be knocked down so easily. Is there anything that I might not have covered today that you might want to talk about?
No, I think, we pretty much covered everything. I talked more about myself than I actually planned on, so apologies for that.
Spoiler alert, that was kind of my plan.
It was the questions that you asked that made it hard not to. No, I mean, at the end of the day, if there are people that are interested in upskilling in mental health, even if it's not mental health first aid, take the time to do that. Ask questions, talk to the people around you. Generally, what we say is, as a whole, if someone's really struggling or going through a tough time, a conversation can be everything. So people just knowing that it's okay to talk to people how they feel, what's going on for them, and that the person actually cares genuinely and is listening can be, all that's needed to help that person. So
yeah, just the importance of listening to the person talk without judgment, I think, is a really important one.
Yeah, and
remember, that's something that anyone can really practice.
Every single person makes judgments, but about being able to put those aside and not let that impact the conversation and support that you're trying to provide.
Yep, exactly right. I think that's almost an hour. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. Especially also too, this is number 1 podcast episode.
Number 1
of this. This is exciting time for me and a good way to fill in my me time during COVID. And again, I can't thank you enough for your delivery on the course. And thank you for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No worries. I'll talk to you soon.
Good luck. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.